Srinivas. So
the webinar is now live.
Second avatar of you.
Okay. So we have the audience joining in, sir.
Okay.
We'll just wait for a moment.
Yeah. That reminds me, Mr. Srinivas, I don't know whether you played anything with Second Life. You're aware of Second Life, right? I think it was quite a boom in about, 2010, 2008 to 2010. I actually had my avatar. And we created a group pool and we had virtual conferences. So I had my avatar. Many of us actually had an avatar, right? And whatever that you had wanted to do in Second Life. I think I would still have my ID. I haven't really gone into the virtual world with Second Life for the last 3-4 years, but that was an interesting thing.
Yeah, I'm happy actually looking at exploring other things, which is so far it's good.
Yeah, that was very, I would say, rather disruptive concept that you can actually play as an avatar, remain anonymous, go anywhere, visit anything, do whatever that you want to do. You want to do surfing, you want to do whatever, skiing, you do whatever, meet friends, as real as it gets. It was phenomenal, but I think it kind of lost the sheen and luster. So it's not there anymore as much as it was.
Right.
And you are based in,
Bangalore.
Please go ahead, sir. Good evening to all the participants. I welcome you all from B School to have joined this webinar. We have some more audience joining in. Just give us another 30 seconds or a minute and we shall get started. I appreciate your patience. Thank you so very much. Yes, sir, you said something.
No, we were just chatting.
I think where am I based out of? So I've been in Bangalore. I've been the last many years in Bangalore.
Oh, really? Okay. I used to live in Bangalore in the 80s and the early 90s.
Oh, okay. Actually,
So,
same here. 80s, I was in Bangalore, moved to US. And then I came back from US and landed back in Bangalore. And since then, I'm pretty much in Bangalore.
Wonderful.
But I have fond memories.
That Bangalore was very different, sir.
That Bangalore was different. I was about to say that. Yeah, if you're talking 15 years.
All right. I think get started, sir. Okay, once again, good evening to all the participants who have joined us on this webinar. On behalf of our group director, Professor Dr. Uday Salunke, and our senior dean and director, Dr. Anil Rao Paila, I extend my warm greetings on this Friday evening for you to have joined us to hear about business analytics present and future. Just before, as we get started, allow me to just give you a brief profile about V School. Wellinkar Institute of Management was established in 1977 at Mumbai. That campus exists for the last 44 years, and Bangalore campus exists for the last 13 years. We belong to a trust called SP Mandali Trust, which has a heritage of existence of 136 years in India promoting education. Under the trust, we have 42 institutions. We have some schools and colleges in Pune. SP School and SP College are the very popular ones, which have existence of more than 100 years. We have Podar's College and Ruya's College that are again very popular for all the Mumbaikars and Maharashtrians. And the very own Wellinkar brand, which is now called V School. Again, very popular. We figure out among the top business schools in the country. And we have our faculties who come with very rich industry as well as academic backgrounds. And a lot of industry collaboration. I myself, Professor Vikram Garg, I lead the Management Development Center of V School Bangalore campus. And from MDC, we engage with various corporates in imparting education to the working professionals. So we we heavily focus on capacity building of junior level managers, senior level managers, even as well as the top level leaders. And here we are talking about business analytics, present and future. And what more can we have than having two great leaders who come with very rich experience from the industry, Mr. Srinivasan and Mr. Amol Mahamuni. The format of the webinar would be that we will open up the session with opening remarks from two of our eminent speakers, and then we shall have question and answers from my side. That would be basically lead questions from the opening remarks of the speakers. And then we shall also take up questions coming up from the audience. So while the conversation starts here, I would request the audience to feel free to post your questions in the Q&A panel. That shall be taken up, or as and when possible, we will pitch in those questions as well. All right, so let's get started. I would like to call upon our first speaker of the day, Mr. Srinivasan. Before I request sir to share his opening remarks, allow me to introduce him. Mr. Srinivasan has 30 plus years of experience at Pfizer, Novartis, GSK, and Astra in global leadership roles across Europe, Asia, Asia Pacific, US, and India. At present, Srini is a board of director and advisor at many companies worldwide. To name a few, he is board of director Tech Solutions Limited India, founder and director Supra Oncology Private Limited India, advisor Asco's Cancer Link USA, chairman I3 Partners GmbH Switzerland, advisor and mentor Herbal Strategy India. He holds a degree in pharmacy from Madras Medical College, an MBA from London School of Business, and has received executive training at Harvard Business School. Most recently, Srini was managing director at Pfizer Healthcare India Private Limited. Previously at Novartis, he was global head of commercial operations in Switzerland, where he led strategy, managed worldwide functions of integrated insights, business analytics, data management, and accelerated the build-up of global functions at Hyderabad. Mr. Srinivasan, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. We are extremely happy to have you on this webinar. The forum is all yours, sir. Request you to share your opening remarks.
Okay, thanks, Vikram, for your basically generous words, kind introduction. For me, it's an absolute pleasure to join this session and also share the panel with Mr. Amol. It's such a and also as an opportunity to share perspectives with the team, and it's also exchange some ideas in the process. I thank the V School for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
From a context setting perspective, right? I would like to highlight three because the topic of the session is business analytics, present and the future, and so there are so many videos and webinars on this topic, courses on this topic, right? So I think we should spend this time more in a very practical way, more interactive way, and just it's more inspiring for everyone who is interested or who is practicing analytics. So let's keep it in such a way. So I will provide quickly some of my initial thoughts. So the business analytics, I think, or more analytics has existed very many years ago. Historically, people have used it at the time of wars, at the time of doing trade. People have used it. Even astronomy, people have used to predict their lives. So people, astrology, astronomy. So a lot of things have been there. But those days, a lot of assumptions and a lot of the data, I don't know how they've used the data, but instead of computers, they've used human mind, right? Human brain was used. But this has changed significantly in the last, I don't know, maybe 20, 30, 40 years with so much of data explosion in terms of every day we generate, and also through technology, the computing power has increased. So that's the change. So it's analytics is not new, but the way we do analytics has changed. And then increasingly, as the way we use, there is also increasingly people have started using analysis in the corporate world or in many, many places in finding some applications in areas. Like, for example, if you take sports, people have used to, in fact, play games better. You take government, people are able to, let's say elections, people are able to communicate better with their audience. Or if you take, let's take environment, right? Whether it's short-term weather changes or long-term climate changes, people are using it to predict these changes. Or maybe at a very personal, individual level, increasingly the clinicians, doctors, healthcare systems have started using to improve the outcomes. So there are multiple, we are able to connect analytics to at a very personal level, to a very abstract climate change level, and also our connection with the government or the sports with entertainers, we are able to connect it and do it all the time. But what happens is, when you take all those things, and then when you start, the businesses have been formed to commercialize some of the opportunities using analysis. So every area you will find companies. So I'm just bringing the context from simple analysis to a much more a business analysis, because that is relevant for the topic. And then its applications are in across all industries, it's across companies, across functions, and also across the individual level. It happens in the business area. And what are the three areas they primarily being used is only to develop some scenario strategies in the corporate world. They are also used for decision support. So decision support, day in, day out, decisions are taken in every function, and also to solve some problems. So if you look at it, so there is on a day in, day basis, there are multiple applications, and we use business analysis as a tool, as a process to support these decisions or support to solve problems. But what is more important and what is generally being talked about, I will mention this, right? Generally, we spend a lot of time in talking about the aspects about what and okay, I would say it's much more about how do we do business analysis. That's how you will find courses exist, you will find programs, you'll learn a lot about this. But then there is a more and more, when you start doing how to do it, there are two other elements comes into the play. The what, right? So it moves to the data, what data do we use? And then why, right? It's much more a purpose, right? The questions or the context. So if you look at it, what, why, and how, all the three are as important when you come to business analysis. In every function, at every level, and it opens up opportunities to drive performance. But what is being less talked about, and what is much more important, or at least equally important, is the impact. We know its applications, and many often, right? You will find a tremendous amount of analysis being done, but there is somewhere they're lost in translation. So there is a process that is missed out, is a translation, and translating it to actionable insights. That's not much spent time, right? Because that is where is going to be used to have an impact. And then the even less talked about is, how do we make this actionable insights available at the right time, at the right place, to the right people? If this is not available, no amount of business analysis is going to have an impact on this. So while we all know, we are excited about this, but there is in the organization context, okay, I need to know how are we going to do the business analysis well. Second is how are we going to translate it into an actionable insight that's going to be applied. And then third one is how are we going to make this one available at the right time, at the right place, with the right person, at the point of solving problems, at the point of whether it's taking decisions. So just to set the context. Okay.
Sir, well received your thoughts. What comes out very clear, you said very rightly, analytics is not new. The way we are using analytics has changed. And invariably, we definitely are seeing application of analytics cutting across all the sectors, let alone the business, even environment, politics, sports. That is very interesting that you have shared. What, why, and how is certainly the whole reason behind the application and the utilization of analytics. Thank you, sir, for that opening remarks. I now call upon our next distinguished speaker, Mr. Amol Mahamuni. Before I request Mr. Amol to share his opening remarks, allow me to introduce him. Mr. Amol Mahamuni is an IIT graduate and seasoned executive with an excellent track record of technical and business management responsibilities in a career spanning over 33 years. He is currently leading data science practice as a program director, which involves cognitive solution development at IBM GTS Labs. He also has played a key role in infrastructure management, cognitive automation portfolio development, and IBM's services platform development. Mr. Amol, warm welcome from V School and request you to please share your opening remarks. We don't hear you, Mr. Amol. Could you please check on the...
There was a double mute. It should be okay. Yeah, I mean, this is what happens, right? Normally there are double mutes, right? Yeah, sorry about that. I was just saying thanks, Dr. Vikram, and thanks, Srini as well for the opening remarks. Certainly, I would echo quite a few of the things, and if I just explain what Srini has stated, right? So it's not when we talk of anything from the AI modeling or what was earlier called the future generation computing to the neural networks. I recall when I used to work for Indian Space Research, which was more than 25 years back, I had the first brush with the fuzzy logic and expert system and neural network and analytics, right? So it's not new. Actually, I would argue that one of the best awards in the computer science is the Alan Turing Award, right? And it comes all the way from 1950s, which is this Turing compute machine, which is also based on the data analytics, right? So today, when we really look at this, the growth, the opportunities across the business segments, and that's because of multiple factors. But primarily, I put that as as it goes to say that data is the new natural resource, and it truly is, right? And how do you really mine it? And it's only going to be as useful as it talks the business context, which the data has to be able to talk to you, speak to you almost to the extent that the system of records actually becomes the system of insights. And many things will happen in between, right? We call it the system of correlation and the insight generation. But those are the actionable insights that Srini was also mentioning, which could be automated remediation or whatever it is, right? But to an extent that we should be able to mine the data. And why is it becoming too important, and why it's something which is talk of the town today, right? All across. So I always mention that there are these 5 technologies which are kind of ruling the roost today. AI and cloud, and of course, a few others, but of course, AI and ML and the data analytics being certainly one of those, right? And that's because of this spurt of the data growth which is happening today. And the growth is quite natural because, I come from an era where I actually used to stand up in a queue to place a trunk call in India and wait for something like 3 to 4 hours to speak for 2-3 minutes just across 100 kilometers, right? To the extent that, the growth of the mobiles, or I would say the phenomenal invasion of this entire technology, even when it is 4G, is going to be totally different in the low latency 5G. We can talk about it later. Today, we're talking of 5 billion phones in the world. We're talking of something like 2.5 to 3 exabyte of data being generated every day, right? And going to maybe, zettabyte and yottabyte and what have you, right? So that is going to be phenomenal growth, and it's already is at an increasing pace. And now how do you really try to nurture that, and how do you really try to mine the data? And that's possible because of multitude of the systems which are coming into the play, including many open source segment, including the Keras TensorFlows, for instance. It also includes the whole called cloud computing, where we can go and probably rent out what are the compute and storage or object storage that you really want, and be able to mine the data to create either the BI analytic or CI analytic, right? And we call it as these three segments, which is a business intelligence, to that of the predictive, which is more of a statistical modeling, to the predictive to cognitive, right? And I can talk a little more on the cognitive side of it. And if I go back to the industry and what are the opportunities, there are many things which we would have thought are not even possible in the yesteryears, right? Probably about 5 years back, had anybody told me that AI can actually compose a symphony, I would have laughed at it, right? And probably we all didn't even believe that there could be a concept of a true autonomous car, which is even possible. And of course, it's been very popular in Teslas and few of the European and North American markets, right? May even happen in India, who knows, right? Maybe 5 years down the line. But let's look at what's there in the medical segment, in the pharmaceutical segment, where Srini comes from, and many other things. So if I give an example of right over here in Bangalore, which is Manipal Hospital, which I think is very close to you, Srini, and I pick up that example. We help the entire oncology department over here to be able to look at millions of the oncology records, and be able to mine that information to do again this prediction with the explainability, reasoning, and interpretability attached to it, for any which is probably not possible for a human mind, to be able to give that view that this looks to be the probable cause, and where it is led. What happens in India particularly, and maybe in all over the world, is quite often, particularly in cancer, people get to know when in third stage, and probably the game is over, right? So it's much better that we actually put technology to use such as this, right? And I can give multiple other examples, but the point which I'm making is, with this data, the growth of the data and the compute and the GPUs and NPUs and TPUs and all of this, whether it is spice block clusters or auto ML and anything that we can talk about from auto ops perspective, is all coming together from a technology for us to exploit this opportunity of using data to business advantage. So I think that's primarily what I'm trying to say. I'm looking forward to the Q&A session where we can address more specifics. Thanks for the opportunity.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Amol, for those opening remarks. You very rightly said, certainly data is new national resource, or is it also, it is also called as the new gold. And it is quite exciting also to hear the application of analytics in the healthcare sector, and the example of Manipal Hospital is an eye-opener for all of us. Sir, I have a couple of questions. Let me just put the first question to Srini, sir. Decisions on gut, because as it is said, decisions were always taken in the organizations. That is not something new. But now we are talking about decision on gut or decision on data. What is your take on this?
No, very interesting question, right? So I will just say it in a way that's relevant and it's easy to understand, right? So traditionally, predominantly all decisions were taken on gut. And when you say gut means people say that it's come through experience. So why do people, so a lot of time people say, yeah, you need to have experience to be in a decision-making role, because then all the time you say, how many years of experience you have? Such questions used to be asked previously, right? So your job application, everything revolves around number of years of experience. When you say, no, I have 15 years of experience, that's the opening sentence. Rather than, because decisions predominantly were taken on gut. So I will come back on the challenges of that. We are moving towards data driven decisions increasingly in major corporations, in all functions. And why is data driven decisions are more impactful than gut only gut-based or experience-based decisions. That doesn't mean that experience is not valid. No, it's not that I'm saying. I am saying that bringing data into the decision-making process increases the objectivity. So what do I mean by objectivity is everyone knows, the person who presents the data, everyone in the company, they know why a decision was made. Lot of times people say, oh, decision is boss has made the decision. That will change from why a decision was made is much more transparent. And when it is objective and it's transparent, there is a greater buy-in from people across the organization at the time of implementation. So when we implement such decisions, there is a greater alignment and you are likely to achieve execution excellence and more impactful outcomes. So that is the reason companies are moving towards bringing data into the decision-making process, the data analysis or the insights into the decision-making process, and complement it with the past experience. So increasingly, people will be they will stop asking only how many years, you don't have 15 years of experience, stop asking that. They will say that, okay, have you taken some of the data? Have you provided data insights at the decision level? Such questions will be asked in the future, and more in the organization level, there'll be a cultural change that happens when leaders starts embracing bringing data into the decision-making process. But then it opens up huge opportunities for anyone at all levels in the organization to take part in the decision-making process. So it is not more like a pyramid.
Wonderful, sir. I think that's a more rational approach taken to the decision making. No doubt about that. While I'm asking these questions, I would request all the attendees to please post your questions as well. We will take as many as possible. And moving on, Mr. Amol, this is a question for you. There's a lot which is talked about analytics. So a basic question which comes is, how much of it is a hype and how much of that is reality? And if it is real, what is the shelf life that you see of this segment? This is coming more from people who might be thinking of building up a career in analytics.
Yep. I think that's a great question, Vikram. Of course, there is this hype versus reality in many of the technology segments, and sometimes it all goes in the Gartner hype curve, right? I mean, it's at the technology inflection point, to the adoption point, to that state of maturity. So I would think that analytics in general, and the reason I say in general is if I really talk of the three-legged stool, right? BI, PI, CI kind of a thing. BI had been there years back, probably decades back, not just years back, right? And what it is graduating towards is this kind of a cognitive intelligence that it's trying to bring in, which gives a completely different perspective of self-learning and continuous learning, which wasn't there in the rule-based system, obviously, right? Now, talking about whether it's a hype or reality, it had been real, maybe into, either in the subconscious mind, as Srini stated, there were these decisions which were data-driven decisions in any case, which are more profound, which were probably taken by humans with more and larger experience, right? Or maybe as a group, as a consensus across the organization, maybe you're taking these decisions, right? Now, you may or may not have in that gut feeling in the previous question, an explainability to go with it, right? Or a kind of a statistical propensity that you can state, and then reason about it, that, here is why I think I kind of arrived at these decisions. And it happens even today. You can't go to a doc and when they say this is a diagnosis, you don't question and say, heck no, why do you say that? Of course, I mean, few of these things are probably just, based on the experience. But now what we are really trying to see here is this growth of the data, and even, as I always call it, the 4 V's of the analytics, right? Which is the volume and the velocity and the variety and the veracity. It becomes almost impossible for any other systems, human otherwise, to be able to wrap the hands around all of these, particularly in real time, to be able to take the decisions. And, I can give a couple of examples, which you talked earlier as well, which it could be on a fraud analytics, for instance. And I can give the business examples, right? In one of the French oil well drilling, and we work very closely with that client. I can give the name of the client. The cost of drilling one oil well is something like, close to about 20 to $25 million. So it's not something which is small. And then the chances that you'll hit the oil out there in the rig is going to be just about 10%. Now, what do you really do in a completely innovative way is what we really do, which is putting the sensors on camshells, and then the cams, which are, the natural habitats, they actually swim around, and we look at the temperature difference and then kind of, do the data prediction or the predictive analysis to be able to say that here is where there's the best chances of hitting, right? The same example that I was giving in oncology, or, yet another real life example I can give is the whole fraud detection, right? Fraud management. That's very real, because we want to be protected from maybe the credit card fraud, for instance, right? Without Vikram knowing about it, his credit card should not be swiped at 5 places simultaneously, right? So how do you prevent this? And from that perspective, it is real, it is happening, and that's the savior, as a matter of fact, right? Across the business segments, we can talk, anything from an industrial automation to industrial safety to that of the healthcare or the financial BFS industry, right? One last point to mention about that is it's not just about the volume and the velocity or the real time, right? And the volume, obviously, as I said, right, nearly 2.5 to 3 exabytes a day. But it's also this kind of fuzziness of the data, which makes it quite difficult to comprehend the data, because it can give a picture based on which lens you actually have to look at the data. And that's where, yet again, you need these AI systems, and that's that cognitive intelligence that you want to bring in, which interprets the data in the context of the business that you're operating in, and also has that, the aspect and element of self-learning or the continuous learning.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Amol. I see questions from the audience coming in. If I were to just group some of those questions, somebody is asking whether analytics is applicable for IT or finance or management or manufacturing. So I'm integrating all of those questions, Srini sir, and this one is for you. During your experience, what was your experience in implementing analytics at companies that you have worked? Was it specific to a function, or it was cross-functional? Can you please throw some light on that?
Okay, so actually, these are great questions, right? To start thinking about it. So these are the questions I never asked myself. I was very fortunate to work in a leadership role in multiple areas, whether it's strategy development, leading global strategy, or in the commercial leadership role, manufacturing, or R&D. So I've been involved in these areas, and in everywhere, increasingly I found during my 30 years, right? If I look at my last 5 years versus the previous, the first 5 years, the using data-driven decisions have increased significantly. The way you make decisions in those things is have the right people and bring the right level of insights into the meetings and start involving them in the decision-making process. So one of the good things that has happened is, even whatever be the level in the organization you are in, you can have an opportunity to have a seat at the table at the decision-making, at the time of decision-making, and bring that relevant insights. So I'm just saying this context because in every function, you will find a business analyst person sitting at the table along with the senior management taking decisions or supporting taking decisions. So there is an increased visibility that has come in, not necessarily because previously, I need to progress multiple levels to have a seat at the table. It is no longer the case. If you have the data and the insights, you become the specialist, you become the go-to person, whether you are in finance or you are in R&D or you are in manufacturing. You will, and it depends on the culture of the company and the leader who believes in how the decisions to be taken. So it depends on these two areas. You are more likely to have a seat at the table. So you don't need to really look at the career opportunities. So now, having said that, that is only for your functional skill. But then there are other areas one can continue to develop and grow. And the areas one can look at career growth in any of these functions. We have to see there are early adopt functions and there are late adopter functions. The early adopter functions are those functions who have tangible quantitative data. You take supply chain, demand, supplies, pricing, volume, capacity, hard data. Wherever finance, hard data. If you look at a function like HR, legal, so you are looking at much more a behavioral pattern, more qualitative data, and therefore it's a lot of subjective elements are there. So the adoption is slow, but increasingly I find these functions also are embracing the data-driven decisions. They are able to look at in terms of how do you in fact motivate, inspire people, what are the problems, how do we solve problems, how do we even look at compensation structures, how do we really flatten all kinds of even organizational restructuring, all those decisions also where it's a lot of subjectivity is involved. People are using more objectivity by using data. So in short, in whether I looked at it, whether I'll give a specific example. In Novartis or in Pfizer, the R&D area, predominantly the areas where the decisions are made are in the risk management. You take a lot of innovation risks, you invest in research, and you do not know how the outcome will be. So you use it to speed up the innovation and also to minimize the risk. When you look at customer-based things, you are looking at how do I really delight the customers? How do I look at the customer data? What are its patterns? Look at competitors' data. How do I bring that context into an integrated insight that can help take decisions? If you look at functions like, okay, I've talked about manufacturing, I've talked about R&D, I've talked about commercial. You can also look at performance in general of the organization. There are multiple ways you look at it, and decisions can be supported or can be embedded by the data so that there is, as I mentioned earlier, there is a much more objectivity in the decision making. So for a career opportunity for everyone, there is a huge, we have just touched the, what do you call it, tip of the iceberg, you can call it. The scope of using business analysts, the scope of using data-driven decisions is going to increase exponentially in unimaginable way. Why? Because there's greater availability of the data and greater computing power, as Mr. Amol was mentioning about the various tools, the methodologies. So the more you have to embrace these things, because this level of data, humanly, it may not be possible. So it's important for people to develop the methodology and the use of tool skills on one side. At the same time, look at some of the skills that are going to help you to make an impact in the organization. And some of these skills are have a curious mind. Such an important one to do your job well and also to search for opportunities. Communication, needless to say. Once you have done the analysis, you should be able to communicate that clearly with the people so that they are able to understand. Okay, so what are the other aspects that could come into that? Very important thing is having an attitude, right, of bringing rigor to everything you do. It becomes such an important. Okay, I also do analysis. There is another person also does analysis. So how do I make a difference? Bringing rigor there. And that rigor comes from not directly, one is a hard work, but also the attitude of bringing rigor is also very important. And more importantly, one should love to do this process, right? The more you love the process itself, the process becomes a very inspiring aspect in the analytic area.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Moving on, the next question for Mr. Amol. Mr. Amol, these days we talk a lot about upskilling and reskilling, which is the order of the day. So from that perspective, and also as a techno enthusiast, the question is, how do you see technology evolving in business analytics?
Sure,
And
sure.
how does one keep himself abreast with that?
Yeah, sure, sure. Actually, I just wanted to kind of explain, before I get to this question, which is, how do we upscale and, how is technology evolving? I just wanted to explain what Srini was stating. Little that it may be known, particularly I believe to the audiences in India, that right from the 2014 elections, and actually the data is straight there on Google, you can search on the internet. There are certain political parties, which includes BJP, which includes Aam Aadmi Party, and to an extent JDU as well, which profusely use business analytics and the data analytics or the big data analytics to be able to predict, what should be their even election campaign. So it's something which is so pervasive from the analytics perspective. I can give one last example and then come to what are the kind of the technological advances, and somebody should be able to get to that, right? Interestingly, and I think Srini mentioned, I just wanted to kind of echo the same thing, which is even in a sports arena, where it used to be the natural talent, and you're actually going to have this experience of playing what are the number of soccer matches or whatever. We in IBM were very closely involved in the win, and we do work with a few of the clubs directly. And the analysis there is what's the right winning strategy, and that is it going to be the kind of possession of the ball that we are really looking at, or it is how the the defender to how the different three layers are actually going to play, versus is going to be the number of passes. Is it going to be short passes, long passes? So there are multiple views and multiple lenses with which even a game is analyzed today, to be able to see, what's the winning strategy, right? And before I come to your question, right, I think it is relevant to see that, there is this kind of a sense of fear, which also comes in. And I saw one of the questions from the chat, which is, how much of percentage of AI will take on human jobs, right? So true, on one end, we can argue that we have Sophia as one of the first AI robots in 2017, which has been given citizenship of Saudi Arabia as a year. And then, of course, you would have heard that there are paintings which are driven by AI, which are sold for nearly $500,000 onto, South Bays, right? Or Christie's, whatever. So the technology obviously is capable of doing something today, which in the yesteryear wasn't possible either for humans or for technology, right? And that's an important factor. So it's not that we are basically saying that technology is replacing humans. We're basically saying that this technology can do better than what a humans could possibly do. And that goes back to the oncology example, right? Which is yet again to see, I mean, there's absolutely no way that you can consume 5 million or 10 million data points to be able to infer something or to be able to predict something, right? Now, what is it that one need to equip with, right? If I really take this question, of course, there are three basic three-legged stool, or three basic, I would say, the guiding principles with which you have to build this, the entire castle, right? One is the data engineering part of it, before it comes to the data analytics part of it. And of course, there is a data analytics, business intelligence to cognitive intelligence, and then there's a visualization part. All these three are important. The reason it is important is, as I said earlier, the data is only as good as it can bring in the business insights for you, right? Or the actionable insights. So when we talk of the data engineering, there is a lot that we need to look at, from the plumbing of the foundation itself, all the way from ETLing of a data to staging of a data to the data imputation, the data quality, the data wrangling, the data transformation, the data enrichment, and this entire data preparation stage. And it's a fairly complex stage because of the variety of the data. You're talking about different formats. You're talking about different sensors and actuators and different business systems. The business systems are again different. They're probably about 5 different vendors for storage, and each vendor has 10 different systems, and the data looks so different, right? And be able to actually lay your hands on the data, which is the data engineering part of the data platform part, is extremely important, right? So from building up the career, what one could focus on, of course, it's an extremely important thing, because there's garbage in, garbage out. If the data quality, and it can be such a simple example, Vikram, I can tell you, and this from my experience, right? And there's one of the products in IBM that we use for, The simplest problem that I can tell you in UADI, which was faced today, is I'll
Okay.
tell you how the address is written in India. The address in India is a driving direction. It's not an address. So I can tell you the same address in maybe 3 different ways, right? Probably it's the same address, right? I can say it is, this particular thing which is behind Shiva temple, and I can say it is next to Binaka Motors. You can say it is, in front of new public school. I mean, what is that, right? Because it becomes so fuzzy at this point in time for any system to be able to see that, does it really mean the same thing, right? So the data preparation is an extremely important stage where we really look at, and even the names, right? The way we spell the names. My name can be spelled as, 5 different ways. It can be Amol B Mahamuni or Mahamuni AB or ABM, whatever the ways,
Right,
right?
right.
So having that kind of, the data preparation to bring it in the common structure is a fundamental thing which one needs to focus on. The second is the analytics that we just talked about, right? And when you talk of analytics, obviously we are really looking at, all the way from this, the complex correlation of the data or the multivariate correlation of different data points, looking at different models. I mean, it could be CNN, RNN modeling. It could be, anything which is a simple decision tree modeling, the naive-based KNN modeling, to that of, more complex HTM and, LSTM kind of a model, which is very common in these days, and be able to get that inferences which has the explainability, which is what I said, right? And is becoming very critical today for many of the decisions. And again, you can use the Lime and Schaaf and, any surrogate modeling over there to be able to see that, we are able to reason and interpret what it says, right? And then finally, the visualization layer, extremely important. Again, it doesn't matter beyond a point whether you're trying to have Angular or React or D3 or Kivanas or what it is, right? Or the native capabilities of a tool. It is good for anybody who's looking at this career to be looking at it from an end-to-end perspective, all the way from the data engineering to data visualization with an analytic layer in between, because that creates that, the holistic ensemble, which then you can actually apply into the business.
Got it. Great. So there is a follow-up question to that, Mr. Amol. Does one need to be an engineer to become an analyst?
Very good question. Yes. So I would have expected this question, right? Before that, I just want to take, real quick one question. If I take the liberty, Vikram, I
Oh,
see one
please.
question over here, which is, is the AI actually going to take over the human job? I think it's an important question. And I thought, I should address that because I just saw that, right? So despite the fact that we are saying AI can create a symphony today, and then this, the AI paintings and AI novels and all of it, it still lacks certain things, right? It lacks empathy. It lacks all that said and done, the creative skills. It lacks social and interpersonal skills, the cultural sensitivity part of it, right? The argumenting reasoning part of it, and the argumentative reasoning is one of these fields that, we in IBM work. The whole emotional key skills, right? One of the things which is changing in an industry today, which I'm pretty sure Srini knows and must be practicing as well, is what is called this garage method, right? Which is trying to get into the shoes of a persona and trying to drive your, agile epics all the way from the persona itself, right? And then you can build the user stories, and then you can build any DevOps or CI/CD pipelines based on that, right? But this apathy, the way in which you can look at the business problem outside in you being able to personify in looking at the, the business context of it, because there are so many things. And I can give, one of the funnier example in India, that there was a car which was launched in India which did not actually sell, because it had just the radiator which wasn't a smiley face, which was an upside down, right? And it was called less of Shubha Shakun and more of an Apashakun, and the car did not sell. It's such a simple thing, right? But it could be business failure. So when it comes to these nuances, certainly it is going to be the humans, and it is, I think it will be, it will be wrong to say that in the near foreseeable future of 20, 30, 40 years, humans are going to be replaced by machines. Science fiction movies is okay. That's not a reality, right? And other thing to mention over there is, if I really look at 50 years back, I mean, any one of us, I would have argued that the only job in the world 100 years back would be farming jobs. And that was the only job, right? For thousands of years, or maybe, millions. I mean, we in humans, we are on this Mother Earth for 5 million years plus, right? Now, if you really look at, the longest part of it, farming was the only job in the world. And there are many, many jobs that we do today which are not heard about at all. just about 10 years back, right? So I think we should not get unduly worried about the fact that is AI taking over the jobs, because it's the same thing which happened when me and Srini were probably as young as the students, where this kind of a human computer interface and is computerization taking away the jobs, right? So I think that's, let me dispel the myth that it only helps us, assists us in trying to make our lives a little better, a lot better rather, right? So that's mostly what I really wanted to state, right?
Great, great.
And
That's
yeah, I mean, that's very important to say that is AI taking over, and all this science fiction kind of a thing, is it going to supersede and one day, actually maybe it's another interesting thing that I want to mention, that there are many disciplines where many of the governments ethically do not allow AI to play a role. That includes something like the nursing profession. It includes even the weaponization. There is a lot which is happening on AI weaponization. It's good to see the Robocop, but it's difficult to see what if the machines misbehave. Right? So these systems will again be nurturing and coming to the state of maturity where we truly can keep an absolute control over there. But anyway, that's a different subject. The ethical AI is a different subject by itself, right? So I'll probably.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
go
sorry,
sir.
after you. No,
No,
after
go
you.
ahead, sir. No, I mean,
The point I was saying that the data that is um, today, most of the data is unstructured. The whatever be the tools of NLP and all those things that have come in, like 90% of the data is unstructured, and in at least in the next decade or so, just computers alone cannot do this. It has to be, and for me in the healthcare area, there is a manual curation takes place to put that. And then you rightly said, Mr. Amol, the context is so relevant, and the ability to understand the context. So if you are a business analyst, it's very important to focus on understand the context better, and B, focus on communicating whatever you do and help communicate that to the right people. So these two elements, missions cannot just do that, right? So they can do that over a period of time once, but it is a continuous iterative process. And as long as the humans are involved, you are in the initial stages, data is used, analysis is used, but over a period of time, uh, as the humans will use machines to advance the decision making process. So for example, the doctors, for clinical decision support, they may use the insights that can come, or the data, analyzed data, but the decision is taken by the doctor to what is this condition is all about. He may look at the radio imaging, X-rays, CD, MRI scans. He can look at the blood tests. Which comes in numbers, imaging, and he can look at the tissue samples, and he can look at it and say what is happening in the body. But then there is a human element there. So I think for it's an exciting future in the healthcare. Is one of, as I mentioned, there is it's a very late adopters, because data itself is not clear and it's not in the right format. Like that, there are many industries, the data itself is evolving, and the opportunities for growth are going to be huge. And that's where I was trying to say that I wish I'm born 20 years later, because the opportunities that we have today in this area are phenomenal, right? Those days is all about functional, which function you want to do in terms of domain, and then on the other side, which industry, which function. Nowadays, the data comes and it mixes the whole thing. Your skill sets are going to be interoperable across industry, and then once you become an expert in this area, then your opportunities are going to be huge. And second is, I also felt, I was reflecting on this COVID thing, right? um, the whole the analytics function opens up the talent, um, attracting talent from any part of the world is opened up, right? It always existed, but then you have okay, do we need to move them on site, off site, all kinds of things where yeah. But today it doesn't matter. You can be anywhere, and you can be able to if you're good in a certain area, you will be able to. So the opportunity to attract talent, the opportunity to find and work for any company in the world, it is going to evolve. People are not addressing it. We may not see it. People are addressing, okay, they're addressing office spaces and other things. Eventually, they will start coming, looking at attracting the talent. New processes will come and people will be able to attract and work for any company anywhere in the world, from wherever I am there, right? So that opportunity is going to open up.
Great.
Great.
Thank
And
you,
I
sir.
just want to take the question, Vikram, which you asked, right?
Oh, please.
So
Yes.
coming
Yes.
to, is this only a kind of an computer science or an engineering field, right? I can in
Right.
general consider it an engineering field. So I want to mention three things over there, right? The first and foremost, it's all pervasive and it's more ubiquitous. So it's not really something which kind of relates to only the computer engineering or anything. And here's the reason why, right? The tools that you have today, which are available today, all the way from the libraries that you have, and I mentioned something like Keras TensorFlow, or even it could be something that you want to actually use a PySpark cluster, for instance. Today, you can actually go to anything from Azure or Google to whatever it is, right? GCP or whatever it includes IBM Cloud 2 or Alibaba. You can actually buy these on demand. So it's a consumption-based pricing. You don't actually have to own an infrastructure. You can get these NPUs, TPUs, GPUs to the extent that you want it, rent it for whatever time that you have. You can actually take this all off the shelf module. Today is an era where we're not talking of building a basic building block. We're talking of a services composition. We're talking of a mashup where you create a new business service based on the existing suite of services which are available. And that requires an architect mind rather than the computer programmer mind alone, right? And of course, we can argue that if I use some stochastic gradient boosting or I want to use some naive-based and logistic regression, of course, there are going to be these libraries which needs to be created. But well, the good news is that it's being created. And whether it is HTML, STM, which we use quite often, there are so many of these libraries that you can get off the shelf. There is so much of a compute that you can get off the shelf and put it to a business problem. And you also get the data sets. Beautiful, right? And not preaching the choir, but Srini would agree that there are these DDBJ kind of sites which actually can give you even the clinical data, which gives you the genomic data, right? And you can actually look at how a particular drug molecule is going to react on a particular genomic sequence and expedite that entire clinical trial process, which used to take about 12 years earlier, right? You can probably shorten it, which is happening in COVID vaccine as well. So now the whole business segment is changing for a pharmacist to work, for a business analyst in BFS industry to work, or even in hospital management, somebody who is doctor to work on the data. So net, all I'm saying is that the systems today using the Kaggle data sets, the Yahoo data sets, all of this, the TensorFlow kind of libraries and the whole compute which is available on demand does render itself much easier for segments across for them to use the business data for business purposes. It doesn't have to be the computer science.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Amol. Sir talked about a lot of opportunities for this generation. So from that perspective, this question is for both of you. What would be key three suggestions from you if somebody is aspiring to take up a career in analytics?
See, first, so the interest level is known because that's because a person is interested to do a career, right? Now the question is, the person may be a fresher, the person may be working in the analyst function role but want to grow in that career as a career itself, or a person could be working in another function but want to move into the analyst role. So all the three sets of people can move into a business analyst role. And I would say the first point is the show that you have an interest and make it known to people. That's a very important one. I am interested in this area, because many times people may not know whether you are interested in business analyst role, because don't have time and people fail to express it. So therefore, show that you are interested and make it visible to people, number one. Number two, systematically learn the methodology by doing a program and do a program that is relevant and close to the industry where you can apply. And number three, within a company itself, uh, take initiative and do something and show it to your manager saying that, look, this is what I have done. And can I go and do a project in that another function or another department because I'm interested. So engage in a conversation in the company that how I can move and start doing a project or start applying for a role in the function and start or doing something, enhancing, enriching your own role using a lot of analyst function. So that means a conversation, show your interest and make it visible to people, and do a good program that has got a relevant industry collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Srini, for that response. And to add to that, yes, there is one such program available right now in the market, which is vSchool and IBM collaborative program that is developed, leveraging analytics in business. This is a 10-month program, jointly developed and jointly delivered by IBM and vSchool. I would suggest the audience to visit our website and go through the details. And I'm very certain that you will find this program to be very unique and very distinct, as there is a lot of thought which has gone through between the subject matter experts from IBM and the professors from Velinka. And the best part is you will be getting the best of the academia and the industry benefits. The learnings are from the industry's perspective, and towards the end of the program, you also will get certificate from vSchool as well as IBM badges, so which is entitled you to avail both dual certification. And there is a lot more when it comes to the learning. You will get cross-industry exposure, you will get cross-functional exposure, the entire analytics cycle. You will learn right from data visualization, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, and predictive analytics. Adding to that, we also have the web and social analytics. So I would request all of you to just visit the website and go through the program details. And our education consultants also are available for you in case you need any help to understand the program further, as well as to process your admissions. Before we end, one last question, just going back to the industry, Mr. Amol, I was very curious to ask this question. There is technology on one side, and then there is adoption to the technology. Those two are quite a different challenges altogether. So how do organizations create the data driven culture?
Yeah, a great question, Vikram. And I just want to take this opportunity to, quickly mention two things, and I'll come to this kind of, how do the organization do this, right? So one of the things which I just wanted to mention is we are really looking at, not just about, do I have to be a computer scientist or something to do that? One of the things which I mentioned earlier is this entire, auto ML, or this auto ops, as people call it, right, or ML ops, or what it is, right? It actually makes it far easier for us to be able to creating the model, the analytic model, training the model, and then be able to validate the model and be able to deploy the model. And when we really talk of this entire ML ops, it's not an hands-off process, I must confess, but it's an assisted process where anybody from, whether it's a business finance industry or it could be in the retail industry, actually that's what is happening, right? The promotions management in the retail, how do you really arrive at it, right? Whether it is going to be 10% discount or buy one get one free, or you get some flying miles along with the purchase. So all of these are data-driven decisions, right? I mean, obviously at a scale at which it is being taken, and one thing which you go wrong, your business will be wiped off, right? That's the risk that you carry today. So it better be data-driven decision, right? Another thing that I want to mention is too easy. Should I say easy? It's too risky, I should say, right? To get mired into the details of it, because the obvious choice that people have is Google it, right? And then try and find out how many courses are available out there. They are going to be umpteen, trust me, right? It's not about trying to randomly go and chase some course and then chase your dreams, right? It doesn't work that way. It has to be more directed. It has to be assisted to see that, it actually drives you on a path where it is more tangible, where it actually opens up the doors of opportunities for you to be able to start making your career in the discipline that you are. Your core discipline stays. Very important. Your core discipline stays. These technologies are there to assist what you do, not change what you're going to do. So don't aspire, if you're a pharmacist or if you're a business BFSI person, don't aspire to change yourself into the computer programmer. That's not what you should be doing, right? And that's where the V School IBM collaboration, or institutes like this, and I certainly the collaboration that we've been having is this industry academic collaboration, which aligns this best of breed curricula, right? So rather than kind of getting lost into the ocean of what am I doing, and then kind of splitting your hair that I did this courses and nobody recognizes it, it's much better that you actually sign up for something like this, right? I would strongly advocate you, from the V School, which has this more than 100 years of legacy, join hands with the school which has the repute, which has the industry collaboration. So that could be one. And then, of course, to second what Srini was also saying, so quite often it does not suffice to show an interest. And I'll tell you what, being in a corporate world for nearly 33, 35 years, I've seen many of this, my own reportees coming and saying, I want to do this, because there's always going to be, yet another bright and shiny gizmo for you to play with. And these gizmos are fashion words, buzzwords, right? And you can say, hey, I want to do this WAP, I want to do this 5G, right? Today, maybe 5G is a buzzword. If there is no wood behind an arrow, you better not shoot it, because then you're shooting in the dark. So what actually will put more conviction behind it is you certify yourself from a course such as V School, equip yourself, right? Have that ammunition, and then go with that, blazing full guns, in order to solve the problem that you're solving in a different way, and demonstrate that with tangible manifestation to your management, which increases your credentials and shows that there is an intent behind it, not just a wish, right? Wishful thinking does not help. It has to have a some kind of a conviction behind it, and obviously some the course or something which kind of strengthens you. So don't just say you want to do analytics, do something like this, and then it equips you better to go and say that I have done this, I can solve the problem in a different way, right? And that kind of puts a segue into, are the organizations, the question that you asked, Vikram, right, kind of adapting to this culture of data-driven decision making? It absolutely is, right? And I would say there are two reasons why it is happening today, right? One of the reasons, as I mentioned, the compute power that we had earlier, or even the data availability or the quality data availability, garbage in, garbage out, right, wasn't available in any of the organizations till about recently, for us to be able to even look at this data-driven decision, right? Data-driven insights, actionable insights, right? And that too in real time. Now it is happening. If there is a credit card fraud, it can be detected almost in real time for it to be prevented, for your card to be swiped, right? And that's one of the examples, right? And the same thing you would have seen. It is, I don't know to what extent we can realize this, but if I give any gravity of it, again, not pitching the card to Srini, it is literally impossible for a vaccine to be generated in 6 months with all the clinical trial. This process is 10-year-long process. The
Right.
only way it can be expedited, and I really want everybody to realize this in the audience, that this is the technology driven boon that is actually a God-given thing, which is the natural data as a natural resource and all of it, with which we are probably going to end this pandemic very soon, right, a quarter down the line. And that's only possible because of the analytics. It could not have been possible otherwise, right? So our technology, and are the businesses adopting it? Absolutely. Maybe from a stock exchange to the election to the sports, right? And it kind of relates to one of the questions which is asked: if I actually start making this data-driven decision, does it antagonize somebody? I'm actually stepping on somebody's shoes, right? And that's where I was explaining this about the reasoning and the explainability and all of it, right? So in the AI world, or analytic world, we call it precision and recall, right? Or it is false positives versus true positives. Now the substantiation that you have behind a decision, as long as you're able to explain that with what that I call as an explainability, right? And as long as you have this continuous learning or an active learning, which is a feedback which goes back into the system, there is no question about, because you cannot mathematically challenge these systems, right? So the data-driven decisions are going to be profound, no matter which business segment you're talking about. And that is something which will assist humans in trying to strengthen their decisions, if not replace. and hence there will be better adoption. There is always going to be this kind of I personally call it complement versus supplement kind of a thing, and we have to be a little conscious and cautious about it both, right? We cannot be jumping the gun to say that today the machines are so intelligent that it's going to replace the humans, right? Obviously there will be a lot of resistance over there, and neither is that a reality. So let's not have this fancy kind of the ideas that the robots is going to rule the
Very
world and all of it.
right.
But it's not going to be the other way either, that it will not be that because we want to retain the jobs, we'll kind of keep doing the mundane stuff that the way we were doing it, because then that business will be out. There are businesses much more today. One last example I want to give is, it is sometimes so appalling to see that the company who created the digital camera like Kodak is ousted from the world today. The company which ruled the roost, including the research in motion, or whatever it is, the Nokia mobiles, just within a couple of years can be wiped off the face of the earth, right? So at that pace, when the industry and the businesses are coming in and getting wiped off, the only way you can survive is this data-driven decision. So it has to be adopted, it will be adopted, and it is being adopted. It's just that we got to balance this between the supplement complement kind of an equation, right?
Wonderful, Mr. Amol. On that very note, I think we've reached to the end of this webinar. We are just well past 1 hour, but I'm sure it was all worthwhile. And I, on behalf of vSchool, once again thank Mr. Srinivasan and Mr. Amol Mahamuni for taking out your valuable time over this weekend and coming and giving those great insights onto the analytics, and also helping a lot in the audience who perhaps were here just to know whether they should take a plunge in this sector. If at all they do, what is the kind of skill set that they should acquire. And thank you so very much that you found the leveraging analytics and business program of IBM and vSchool to be worthwhile to be considered. On that very note, thanks once again. And I thank all the audience as well for joining us on this webinar. And I'm sure there are good takeaways for you from this session. And looking forward for further interactions with our education consultants. Please feel free to reach out to us and ask for any other questions. You can also write back to us. We were not able to take up a couple of questions for the limitation of the time, but please do write to us. We will make sure that we respond to your queries. And all those who are interested to knowing more about the program, as we close the session, you will receive a survey feedback. You can post your preference as to how do you want us to reach you, and accordingly our consultants will get connected with you. Thank you once again, Mr. Amol. Thank you very much, Mr. Srinivasan. It's been absolutely a pleasure having both of you on this webinar. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure is all mine. Thanks, Vikram. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.